All right, Miss Sarah, so great to see you, honey. Now listen,
Uh-huh.
this is all about you. Do you understand? This is
Oh,
all about you. We want to know all about you. So what I'm going to do, I want you to start. You left here after eighth or ninth grade.
I left there after ninth grade.
Okay, what I want you to do is take us from the time you left here, your education, and after your education, what you've been doing, et cetera, okay? And then
Okay,
later
so
on, we'll finish off. I'll ask you some reminiscences that I have of you have of the day school, good or bad. Is that okay, hon?
oh yes, I have some show and tell for you.
Oh, you do?
I do.
All right. Okay, so here we are. You're in ninth grade, and you're getting ready to leave. Now
So
take
I'm
us from there.
in ninth grade, and after ninth grade, I went to boarding school for 1 year. I went to Brooks in North Andover, Massachusetts, and my big brother had gone there, and so I was following in his footsteps and very excited to go there. But
Briggs,
I did
right?
Briggs,
Briggs,
yes.
right. I got it.
I did not like Brooks, and so I came back here and I went to Twin Lakes High School.
Twin Lakes High School.
Oh, and I remember the stories that you would tell us about Twin Lakes High School.
That's where both my children went, you know.
Yeah.
They both graduated from there.
And, you would tell us all these stories. So I went to Twin Lakes. I loved it. It was huge. I'd never been on a campus so big. There were so many kids. I just had the time of my life at Twin Lakes. And then after there, I went to Yale University and graduated from Yale with a degree in philosophy.
Philosophy. Oh my goodness gracious. Well, I'll
And
have philosophical questions for you later on, okay? All right?
well, and you know what a philosophy major requires you to do? You have to A, think critically, you have to B, think creatively, and you have to C, be able to write.
And read. You got to be a good reader.
You got to be a good reader.
Be a good reader.
Yep.
I always tell our kids, if you want to be a critical thinker for things, you got to be a good reader. Have to.
Yes.
Have to be a clear writer. You don't have to be a great writer, but a clear writer so people can understand what you're trying to say.
Yes.
And that's what we're concerned with in this school mostly, those first two.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the third one, it's a little harder. You have to be objective and fair. That's another difficult one. And the last one, you're going to have some moral courage, because if you're a critical thinker, honey, at some point in your life, you're going to, and if some of you find out, even in Palm Beach Day School, you're going to disagree with your peers.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to disagree with your government. You're going to disagree with your church and synagogue at times. You're going to disagree with your parents. Those aren't easy things to do. Philosophy, we'll get to that later. Go ahead.
Well, and as you know, I could not have succeeded in that major had I not had the extraordinary training that I had in your class, which I will come back to with my show and tell.
Okay.
Because I went down a bit of a memory lane the other day when I discovered some things in my personal archives. So after college, I went and I worked at Alfred A. Knopf Publishing. And so I worked in publishing. 2 weeks after I graduated, I went right into publishing. And that was a tremendous experience in terms of furthering my education in becoming a writer and learning just all about what the publishing business involves. I loved it. And you know who I worked with at Knopf? I worked with Val Stambo.
Oh.
Remember Valerie?
I remember Valerie.
Yes.
Valerie.
So she worked there when I started working there. And then
Joette.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. And so then after publishing, I left publishing in my early 20s, and I've been a freelancer ever since. So I, have just done a number of freelance jobs in writing and publishing since the 1990s, and I've written several books, and then further along the line, I got back involved in music. And so added to my writing, I have become a singer and a performer, and I've written a one-woman show that I've performed in many places, and also became an activist for gay rights and speaking up for equality.
Good.
And so I've, my life has been varied. My career has been varied in terms of books and performance and music and activism, and yet always at the base of it, it's telling a story, and it's working to bring people together and take us all to someplace new, and reconnect us with ourselves.
What are you performing now currently with this COVID, or are you shut down?
I'm shut down. I'm not performing. Everything is off the books right now. And so, who knows when it will come back.
Is there any, in your repertoire, do you have any material that would be relevant to Palm Beach Day School coming here and performing? Or would that?
Oh, I could always find something that's relevant to Palm Beach Day School. Oh, sure.
That
would be fun. Absolutely.
Of course. Let me ask, are you writing a novel?
I am not writing a novel right now.
You're not writing a novel right now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you writing something right now?
I am working on another book.
Okay, long as you're working,
Yes.
Remember when I had so many students who were interested in writing, and they'd say to me, Mr. Greco, what advice do you have? I want to be a writer. I'd say, I'm going to give you two things. Number one, stay away from English departments in college.
Yes.
They'll corrupt you.
Yes.
Corrupt you. You don't want to. They're all corrupt. Well, what should I study in college? Take a wide variety. Don't limit yourself to literature. Do a lot of that, but do some science. So that you can think about science, things like that, technology, be well-rounded like that. And aside from that, write. You have to write. Don't tell me you need the right mood or you have to go to the right atmosphere. No, every day, pick it up and do some writing. And if you're a writer,
yes,
right?
Yes,
have you found that true, honey?
Absolutely. Because, yes, writing is a muscle.
That's right.
And it needs to be exercised on a regular basis.
Yeah. And one thing we know from studying famous writers, kids will say, well, what's their this or that? They're varied. Some of them can only write standing up. Hemingway, stood up. He did all his writing. Others would have to write that be in a bar or saloon drinking and doing some. It doesn't matter. As long as you write.
Yep. Yes. Edith Wharton wrote in bed.
In bed, yeah. Who else? Who wrote Remembrance of Things Past?
Yes.
He stayed in his bed too, in his bedroom.
Yes.
Days. Just that's what he did. So anyway, okay, now let's go now. Where do we go from here? I'm interested in. I'm interested in the mental of Miss Sarah.
Well, can I show you some things?
Yes, hon, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I don't think I ever told you that after I finished this novel, it brought me to tears.
Really? Did it?
It did. It totally brought me to tears. And I realized I don't think I'd ever told you that. I was like crying, Oh, it's just great. Just great. So now I knew that I had saved my character sketch.
Oh, you did it on?
I did it on an aunt of mine named Sunny McNeil.
Okay.
And
vaguely remembering now. This is in. Give me a year here. This would
be in 1983.
1983, honey. That's 17. That's 37 years.
That's a long time ago.
Time ago. This brain, I hope it's okay, but you know, it still gets a little, I forget a few things. Although I never forgot you. Never, ever, ever.
Well, I knew that I had saved this, and I'm very happy to say that you liked what I wrote. So I got a good grade on that. But what I didn't realize that I had saved, do you know, I have every single paper I ever wrote for you. 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, every single paper. And so I have to read you what I wrote. My very first paper for you, you asked us to write our first impressions of being in the upper school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I finished it. I have to, you know, this is now the time that one needs reading glasses. And so I finished my essay by saying, the only other teacher that I had not had before was Mr. Greco. I did not really know what to expect of Mr. Greco. I do know now that Mr. Greco is a super hard teacher, and I will learn more English than ever before.
I hope you have, and I know you have.
I have. And then I have to say, my first paper, I got a 65.
Ooh.
And at the bottom of it, it's hysterical. You say, you know, your paper lacks unity. But I'm very happy to say that by the end of my last paper, I go from a 65 to my last paper for you was a 95. So I went in the right direction.
There are very few of those, honey. You know that, don't you? Very few of those. So you can be very proud of that.
Oh my gosh. It was so funny reading through your comments on my papers. And then I also have to point out in one paper, I say, wait, where is it? Not that one. Oh, this one. I'm going to hold you to this, by the way.
Okay. I
say, I'm talking about being a writer. And in an article, you know, one of my magazine articles, papers for you, I said, this article has made me realize a great thing. Always to be confident that I will succeed, and that if I fail, I will know that I tried my hardest. I would not mind being a writer when I grow up. If I do succeed in becoming an author, I will always remember the information I learned, and the confidence will help me tremendously. And you wrote, I will buy your book.
There you go. There's the commitment.
Well, I will say, reading through my papers, I was really impressed with how again, getting back to critical thinking, how you were teaching us to communicate ideas and communicate our opinions and to be really clear. And always word choice was so important. And, you know, another comment that you would write in the margins was stringy. You know, if something was stringy, things were holding together. And, you know, it was amazing how much you were teaching us, but you were also letting us develop our own voice. And, you know, each of us develop our own voice. And I also thought, in terms of the personal essays that we would write for you, I was amazed at just how much you learned about every student that you had, and the ability to hold that space for the student to grow. It was so tremendous. The freedom to be able to express ourselves and discover who we are. In doing so is huge.
Now let's get a little deeper here. I'm just curious. You said you took philosophy.
I did.
You majored in philosophy. By the way, two of my interviews we had here were with Kotzen. You remember? What's his first name, Barb? Kotzen? Matthew Kotzen, and Christian Miller. Now, Christian Miller is a PhD teaching philosophy at Wake Forest University, and Kotzen is a PhD teaching philosophy at the University of North Carolina.
Who knew?
And they both have their tenure. They've both published and everything. So anyway, during the interview, and a lot of these things, I don't ask this question but you, I'm going to, because you're a philosophy.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to see how you're going to react to this, honey. I read a philosopher once, one of the two most brilliant things I ever heard in philosophy class. One philosophy professor said, remember this, people. He said, there never was philosopher could bear a toothache patiently, which is very true. Okay. And then another thing he said is, one famous philosopher said, and I could never figure this out. I still haven't figured it out. Maybe you can help me. Begin in certainty and end in doubt.
Yeah.
Begin in doubt and end in certainty. I haven't figured out. I don't know where I am. For example, and I'm going to tell you this you're going to, I haven't yet decided, and I'm 88 years old, and how many more, and I haven't decided whether I believe in free will or not. I don't know. I've made up my mind a couple times. I've changed it. I've come back, getting into science, especially Darwin's theories and things like that. I don't know. Determinism. Do we have a choice, or is it already determined? Not by anything supernatural or that, but by our past reinforcement schedules from Skinner and all that, from our genetic background. Is the fact that we think we're making a choice, that's an illusion. It's already been made. Although we think there's an autonomous me in there, there really isn't.
Isn't the beauty in the questioning?
Oh yes, I agree with you. I would have it no other way. I would have it no other way. But it's still, I took a course in Skinnerian psychology once in college, and I found out that I used it in my teaching for a couple principles. For example, if you wrote a good paper for me, I'll say very good.
Yeah.
And if you did another one, I wouldn't necessarily say good. I'd wait. Now, maybe the fifth or sixth time you did something good, I'd say very good. Intermittent reinforcement.
Yes.
I'm not going to praise you every time.
Yes.
Because I saw in the lab working with rats. Okay. I want you to understand a very difficult concept. Well, to expect you to give it to you here and you have it there? No. Successive approximation. A little step here and a little step there, and eventually you'll have, and I saw them and they worked in my classes. So now, and they say, by the way, those two professors, my ex-students, my philosophy, neither one of them have accepted determinism, by the way. They said the whole field of philosophy is completely divided on that. Completely divided on. Some accept it, some don't. I don't know.
Well, I can testify from my papers that the praise was not that you meted out the praise. And, it wasn't as though you would, anytime, if I had a series of good papers, I didn't say, you didn't write, good, great on every one. It was the grade said that I had done well.
Right.
And it meant more those few times when you would say, good, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. It brought it home, and it encouraged me to work harder, as opposed to if I was told that everything I did was great. I mean, what's the motivation? I loved on my papers also the question marks, and they were not subtle question marks. At the bottom there'd be like 3 big question marks. What's the point? What's the point? But I would go back and I would write and I would correct things, and I would try to answer your questions. And for me, it made me really curious. It made me want to learn more. So I responded really well to that challenge. And, when you say a moment ago, if you start in doubt, you end in certainty. If you start in certainty, you end in doubt. But that whole thing is a cycle.
Yes, it is.
And what it does is it keeps us going, because you kind of need to continue to break down a system to make it stronger and to learn. And so, you throughout life or in whatever project, we'll arrive at a certain point where we feel calm, and then something comes along that disrupts it. And then you work through that, and you ask questions, and you overcome something, you face a challenge, and then you come back to calm, and then you go forward with another situation that challenges you. And at each point along the way, you build strength, because you have rest when you're certain, and then you have challenge when you're in doubt. And all along the way, just you build and build and build. I would never want to arrive at a point where I was settling for certainty. That would just be.
Hey, honey.
Yeah.
I'm 88. I haven't arrived yet. I keep asking, when am I going to arrive at some certain? Nope, not yet. Not yet.
It keeps us going,
That's right. Well, I'm thankful for one thing. You see, I use this now. I have all my eight orthopedic operations that I have. By the way, your mom, how's your mom?
Oh, she's well. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
I remember she worked for Dr. Burdett.
She did. Yep.
He did half those operations on me, and I walk with a cane now. But he was but it was just the operations. But sometimes when I'm hurting, really hurting, and from the arthritis and everything, and I start feeling sorry for myself. But wait a minute. This is still working.
Yeah.
That's what frightened me. If I would lose. Now, I think maybe you can tell. Have you seen any diminution in mental capacity here? Be honest with me.
0.
Okay. Next time you come to town and we go to lunch,
yes,
dinner, I'm going to ask you again, and you be sure you measure it. Okay.
I will. I have to tell you another couple of memories.
Go ahead.
I remember that second story balcony. Because that was the balcony.
Right. You were in that room on the balcony, right?
Yep.
That's right. Barb, remember? Was Mr. Bayless there when you were there, honey?
Young Mr. Bayless.
Yeah, young Mr. Bayless. Okay.
Yeah.
We used to stand up on that balcony and
yeah. And I remember walking past, and you told me one day, this is not something that I have fulfilled, but you told me one day, you said, you could be president. Which I'm not running for president, thank God. But what it did was it just instilled a sense of possibility. And I loved that about being a student of yours, because I feel as though that was something that I and I know everybody else experienced, was a sense of possibility. There was always a sense of growth.
Fact. Let me ask you this about reminiscences.
Yes.
Do you remember your speech unit?
Of course I do. Are you kidding? That speech unit so your English and your speech class are the foundation of my life. That
10-minute speech?
Oh, yeah. Well, you had to build up, 1 minute. You had to have 1 minute prepared.
We had 10-1, and then we started 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7, 8, and 10.
Oh, yeah.
And on the clock, too.
Are you kidding? Oh, yeah. I remember that. All the lessons. And I was going through the lessons a while ago with a friend of mine who's an Episcopal priest, and she had just become ordained, but she was struggling at the pulpit in terms of giving speeches, giving the sermon and whatnot. And I went through so many of the things that you taught us. I mean, I can still remember, you're like, don't grip the podium, for dear life. And And then don't sway from side to side, you know.
Eye contact.
Eye contact to the whole room. Look in the back of the room. Take everybody in. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh, and no reading. You can't read.
Oh, I wouldn't let no reading.
No reading of the cards.
You make an outline. You make an outline, and you go over that outline time after time. And you may go over that outline 20 or 30 times. And each time you go over it, it will be a little different. But when you give the speech, the most natural one will come out.
Well,
the natural one will come out.
It literally has taught me and stayed with me in every area of my life, but in particular with what I do, and if I'm ever up in front of people or I have to speak or perform or whatnot. It started with your class because we weren't allowed to use notes. I would practice in front of the mirror and, you know, learning to, because practicing in front of the mirror, you're looking at another face and you can't then be distracted by the faces that you're going to see in the audience. And that was a first for me in terms of getting used to looking into somebody's eyes. But also because I couldn't read it, I now write everything I do in front of people. I write it in my head.
That's great.
And it's because
you have your notes in your head.
It's because of you. I've written my show in my head. I wrote anything that I talk in front of people. I write. I create it up here first, and only afterwards then will I write it down if I need to have a copy for.
And if something happens where you forget something, all you got to do is look in that.
Yeah.
And you have it. And you have it. That's wonderful. How about this? Let me ask you this. Do you remember Julius Caesar's 75 lines? In Cyrano de Bergerac, 75 lines? What's so?
I also remember that you assigned us War and Peace.
War and Peace. Not everyone.
And no one in the class read it.
Right. But that's okay.
So you failed us. So none of us got E Club because nobody read it. So you assigned it to us again, and then we read it. And I mean, War and Peace. You know, Julius Caesar, Cyrano de Bergerac. These things were just so pivotal, and they change the way that you think and the way that you look at the world. Yeah.
Remember the Count of Monte Cristo?
Oh yes. Oh, yes. I can remember you reading The Count of Monte Cristo.
So many of them come back and say that's still their favorite novel.
Yes.
Count of Monte Cristo.
So I have some questions for you.
Go ahead.
So where did you get the idea for the red dot?
For what, honey?
For the red dot.
The red dot. Well, you know, I thought it was a time-saving thing.
Uh-huh.
A lot of times you'll go into class and you'll say, well, we're going to do this. I want you to take out, and there'll be a lot of questions. So I tell them, no. Once you see that red sign, there's absolutely no talking. I will answer any questions in my explanation, but this will give us all more time. So, and I don't put it up except when I want absolute silence, because usually it was during a test or writing.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, when they write, they want it quiet. And it worked usually. It worked most of the time. Go ahead.
Okay, my next question is, what is your favorite novel?
My favorite novel. I have two of them, honey. One of them is The Way of All Flesh by Samuel Butler. He only wrote 2 books, that and Erewhon. And it's being credited, that book is being credited with destroying the Church of England. It's about a minister and things like that, okay? That was one of them. And another one was Crime and Punishment. Something about that book was so heavy, and that got me on, that steered me a little bit towards determinism and that. And, you know, the religious thing was so, but anyway, and you know, any book, it depends on where you are in life when you read it.
It's true.
When
Yeah.
I read The Way of All Flesh, I was in college when I read it. I remember, and I remember it was attacking classical religion and things in the hypocrisy of religion and things like that. So that appealed to me, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But it was such good writing too. I loved English. I loved English 17th, 18th century English novels. I don't know if I had you people do, but Silas Marner. Did you ever read Silas Marner?
That does not ring a bell.
Okay,
I mean, I
Marianne,
know of it, Silas Marner, but I don't think we read
Marianne
it for
Evans,
you.
a woman. What was her? George Eliot. She used because women weren't allowed to write in those days.
Right, right.
And I had some of the kids read it, and one girl I remember told me, she said, "You know, Mr. Greco, this book I did," but she said it reads like a soap opera. There's everything in it. There's drugs, stealing, this, that, such. She says everything in it, and the writing is so good. The writing is so good, you know.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. So The Way of All Flesh, Crime and Punishment,
Punishment.
and maybe Silas Marner.
The Russians were I've decided in my reading, the Russians were the greatest novelists, though.
Mm-hmm.
Dostoevsky, what do you call? Tolstoy. I enjoyed the plays. Which plays did I like? Of course, Cyrano and Julius Caesar were two of my favorites.
Yes.
Like George Bernard Shaw's, a number of his plays. I think I had some of the kids read Man and Superman and Androcles and the Lion, and I'd switch them during the year. Some classes I'd give some to, some I'd give another to. Pygmalion. You ever see Pygmalion?
I did, absolutely, yes.
You ever see the play, the musical they made out of it?
My Fair Lady.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
How about now your musical taste? Tell me now, just to get you into this, my musical taste, I love every kind of music except hip hop,
Yeah.
rap, which I don't consider music, and jazz, extreme jazz.
Oh, like very improvisational jazz?
Yeah, all that. I just don't like. My favorite, of course, is operas, symphonies, Beethoven, that whole classical music, classical opera. I love Western. I think that one of America's great musical geniuses was, here the name's going to come real quick, Hank Williams.
Oh,
Your
yeah.
Cheating Heart. Did you ever read some of his lyrics, honey? Amazing.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I like some Western. I like a lot of folk music. So just about every kind of music. I have to hear music every day. I can't play tennis or anything, but I go home and every day for an hour I get on my stationary bicycle, put on an hour of music, and that's what I get every day.
Oh, I love that.
I see in your thing that you're into some kind of music that.
Yes, so I right now perform a lot of music from the 1920s. A lot of music from the 20s and the 30s, and then even some music from the 19th century, and vaudeville and variety theater, and and blues.
Blues.
Yep, early blues. Yeah.
Early blues. Okay. Yes. Yeah, every kind of music. Those are the only two I don't care for: rap and
hip hop. Right.
That progressive jazz, that's what they call it.
Yeah.
Progressive jazz. It was a musician tried to explain to me that, well, you use quarter notes, or so I don't know what that was talking about.
You're like, I just don't like it. I have another question for you.
Go ahead.
What's your biggest grammar pet peeve?
My biggest grammar pet peeve. Well, let me say this, honey. Grammar most of the grammar that you taught and you learned in my room,
Yeah.
most of the grammar you already knew when you were in 5 years old or 6 years old. Most of us know the basic grammar when you're 5 or 6 years old. Okay. Now, aside from some a little beyond that you got as far as direct ob, things like that, what we mostly concentrated on was usage. But your grammar, and that's in the field of linguistics, by the way, and that's still being debated today. You ever hear of Noam Chomsky?
Oh, yes.
Okay. See, Chomsky says grammar is inborn. That human beings are born with a basic thing of grammar. And you know, I didn't believe that. And then I started thinking and looking at some kids. Yeah, I've heard 5-year-olds say something like, if I do that, can I go to the movies? They're using an introductory adverbial clause in an independent. Well, they never learned that anywhere. But so most of human beings in every culture is inborn, and this is very debated, by the way. Others say, no, that doesn't work that way. But Chomsky says, yes, we are born with the ability. That's what separates us from all other mammals. For example, our brain size, that's why it's so big. It had to hold all those memes. Are you into any memes, honey? Are you into Are you into that at all?
Well, I know I know memes, yes.
Okay. There's a huge field there that's being debated again.
Yeah.
But the language, it's interesting. But most of what we did after the basic subject, predicate, this, that, etc., usage. So that when I hear those broadcasters on television say, well, between the president and he, I cringe. Because you know that between is a preposition and objects of prepositions have to be.
Yes.
For some reason, and this is interesting psychologically, I always called the nominative case the elite case, and the adjective case the common case, the blue collar case. Between he and she, there must be some doubt. That sounds, people think that's good. No, between him and her. But between him and her doesn't sound as elite as the nominative case.
Yeah, I see.
And when these people are trying to use it and they're getting all, instead of following the rules, you know, nominative here, objective, DOs, IOs, OP, objective, subject, and that's it. Remember all the drills you had? How many times would I walk in and say, take out a sheet of paper?
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And the red dot, the red sign turns around right immediately. But
oral quizzes, right?
Oh, there was the oral quizzes. Absolutely. Because that tells you, taught us how to distinguish it out loud.
Right.
You know? Oh, yeah. He is taller than me. You know? You're like, he's taller than I am. He's taller than,
you know. It's another clause. Only we leave the verb off. Right?
Yeah.
But so many people. And so anyway, I used to get upset, but I understand now. It's,
well, because of you, I do get upset. when I, you know, it's like, yeah, those drills really got drilled in. And so sometimes I have to bite my tongue when I hear something that's not, you know, quote unquote proper usage. I'm like, oh, but it's colloquial. So, you know.
That's all right. We won't punish anyone for it.
No.
Well, listen, Sarah, honey, this has been so great.
Oh, it's
so great. You know, you were always one of my favorite. You know that.
I mean, you always, you scared the living daylights out of me, and you always put a smile on my face. And I learned more from you that I can't even, there's no way to express how much I learned from you and how much it has influenced, how much you have influenced me in the course of my life. It's just incredible. And I think and in my book American Phoenix, I acknowledged you, and I think I called you one of the greatest English teachers, that ever lived, because I believe that. I feel so strongly in your gift of.
Well, listen, honey, here's the thing now. What I want you to do, two things. Promise me the next time you're in town,
Yes,
you will call ahead of time so that I know you're coming.
I
and
will.
Make time for me.
Yes,
For a lunch or a dinner, preferably a
promise.
dinner. And we'll
I
hope
promise.
hope this COVID thing is over.
I know.
We'll
I
hope
know.
it's over. And number two, and this has to be something next year.
Mm-hmm.
Come up with something presentation you could make it to school for
Okay.
our school.
Okay.
Something
Yeah.
in your whatever you want,
Yeah.
and we'll see. I don't have that much influence around here, but Mrs. Close does. Everyone, she runs everything, honey. Believe me, she runs everything.
Well, we're not going to let her retire, right?
She's retiring. This is her last year. Yeah, this is her last year. But she'll be back. She'll be back for that. She'll be back for that. Okay.
Well, I would love to come and give a presentation, and you need to be there by my side as we do it. So.
Oh, I would love to, honey.